Hello everyone. I hope you all are doing well, right? So today we have a very special person with us. When I talk about his experience, so he's carrying a lot to talk about. Honestly, he has a very diverse profile when we talk about the industry of tech, and he's carrying a lot of experience in it. Coincidentally, both our names are Manish. So I'm really very happy to have him on this podcast. And talking to such experienced people is actually enlightening for both of us, right? The thing is that I won't waste much of the time now, and we'll just begin with the podcast. If you want to actually know about his credibility and his experience that he's carrying, so you can visit his LinkedIn profile and you'll get an overview about everything, right? So, sir, the mic is all open. Anything that you would like to talk about in your introduction, and then we can just begin with the podcast.
Growth, consistency, idea, reality. It all begins at one point. Here. Want to know how the industry works or how to build yourself? Learn from experienced people from the industry. Subscribe to know more.
Sure. Thank you for having me. If you want to really know about a bit of me, what I've been doing for the past 10, 12 years now. So I began my journey in 2008 with my bachelor's. Did my 4 sprints that we all do. Eventually joined TCS. Was working for a product team actually. Coincidentally, TCS had a product division as well. So was lucky to get that. Eventually moved to the US. Did my master's at USC. Spent 2 years there, focused on data science actually. So that is where I got to know a lot about data science, machine learning, AI, NLP, big data. Worked a couple of projects in the NASA domain as well, but it was completely software thing. Eventually got into a couple of startups in the LA area. Then eventually moved to the Bay Area, worked for Cisco and ABB. Again, coincidentally, I got to do in their machine learning and AI divisions as well.
Right.
Then eventually came back to India around the COVID time. Did a couple of jobs here and heavy. So that's a very small, short intro about me. Yeah.
Like listening to your just this brief answer, this brief introduction, it gives me an overview that okay, there is a lot to hear about, right? So, and you have also given a brief about your story. So, as following the regime in total, we'll just begin with the question that we asked to everyone, right? So, how has been your story? Like, what is your journey? Just give us a brief about it, right?
I have been one of a person who's very curious and very motivated to learn and develop myself. And that is why I think I kept on hopping from one area to another, from full stack web development that I started in TCS, then into Python, then into data science, AI, Web3. I got introduced to Web3 around 2016-17, a very small Solidity EVM kind of development, which has carried on. Now I'm also exploring IO. I did an IoT course last year. And I'm right now I'm doing this Llama 3 development. I've been a person that is really into not just tech learning. Like 4 years ago, I started doing stock market trading. So I've been a person who really likes to go into the depths of things and explore. So that has been one thing that I can attribute myself to, is never stop learning, because I strongly believe the moment you stop learning is when you have your first downturn. And I have a bunch of downturns. Don't think that everything is rosy. So you have downturns, but eventually that's the skill that and the way to approach things will really help you.
Right, understandable. And this is what we are here to talk about, because everyone has a story that has thousands of failures, right? To talk about. And people looking at people's profiles, they just feel like okay, they just did something, and it has been a good way, right? But the reality is that every single opportunity that you got had thousands of failures behind it. Right. So it will be an amazing, podcast overall to hear about every single opportunity, every single experience, and every single downfall that you have had. Right. And so while I was going through your profile, so I just saw so much diversity in your profile. Honestly, like this was something that really inspired me, because that's what I also try to follow, right? And just looking at it, I would just like to read it out, what all you have been into. So full stack, web development, app development, DevOps, cloud, AI, ML, data science, and Web3, right?
Yep.
So I would just like to have a brief about every single thing that you have been into, so that the students understand the pros and cons of the industries that you have been into, right?
Mhm.
And also that how the industry is actually functioning, right? Every single domain individually, how is it functioning, right?
Yep. I mean, one common thing that you will find across domains is, I think it was not that much 10 years ago, but right now everybody expects you to know a lot of things. And if you don't have exactly the knowledge, at least the capability of going and learning and adapting. And that's the reason I've never subscribed to the idea of buying courses,
Yeah.
because eventually the new tech that is coming up, and tech is actually changing so rapidly. For example, like 2 years ago, ChatGPT was here, and now ChatGPT 4 is here, then Llama 2 is coming up, Llama 3 is coming up.
Right.
So the landscape is changing so very fast. If you start to rely on anything, be it courses, be it teachers, be it anything, the main thing that you should be relying on is your inquisitiveness and the way you handle and figure out things. That has been the common thing. I mean, and if you ask me, how I've been to through careers, so it all started at TCS when I was starting to do Java-based web development. Had a small project on Android, but not too much. So eventually, that was my first time exposure to mobile development. But believe me, it was not that in depth, but it was more towards full stack web development. Eventually, I moved for my master's at USC. That is when I gotten my exposure to AI, ML, data science, and all those fields area, which actually fascinated me, but also scared me. Because at that time, if you remember the time around 16, 17, I'm not sure if people are aware of it, but it was so math driven. You won't believe me. There was a course at USC which was very famous and very reputed, but usually PhD students were allowed to take that, and master students were allowed to do that, but they were recommended not to take any other course, because usually you can take 2 or 3 courses, but that course is so heavy you can't even think of actually doing. So I took that course, dropped out, and took some easy course. So my, ML was actually very how do you say, focus that I am not of the liking of it. So that is when I got my exposure to this. Eventually, I did a couple of startup jobs where I was actually focused on iOS development, because I focused on iOS. Even I had Android experiences, because the two benefits to iOS. First is in US, majority of the people actually prefer iOS, and the second is if you have to launch an app, the first paid users are more preferable, more likely to come from iOS than from Android. People are more willing to spend money on that platform. So that is when I got my exposure to iOS development. I did a couple of years. Then eventually, when I moved to Cisco and NABB for my more stable jobs, is when I got introduced to a lot of Cisco people from China, if I'm not wrong, Shanghai, Bangalore, Gurgaon, and that time. So actually talking to business people. So my boss's boss is a 3 level up. Working with clients, I was actually working with San Francisco 49ers. So that's a football team. I mean, not football in the Indian sense. It's the US football, soccer basically. So got to learn a lot how to actually work with people, how to work with clients, eventually deploy. So I remember a time when I was deploying a networking app. It was so different than software engineering, but we were doing it for Southern California edition. So it's the BACS equivalent of India. So power distribution eventually for Southern California. So I mean, you have to be ready to learn, because we were given 2 months, learn how Cisco routers work, deploy an app on that, show it to the client, and the client is asking for things that you really don't know. Then you figure out with your team members and what answer to give them. So I mean, you have to be so responsive and so adaptive. So you can't say no to, okay, a thing might be scary, but believe me, at the end of the scary route is where growth actually happens.
Right.
So this is something separate. It's not technical. It's non-technical. Client handling, project handling, management, but it's equally important as well.
Definitely.
So eventually, so I did a couple of years on that. Eventually, I moved back to India around the COVID time. I did a couple of further gigs on that line, backend data science, NLP sort of introductions. So more recently, I've also touched upon IoT. That is not referred on my LinkedIn because I did a 6 month course. So I did a ASP32 thing that you can actually track. I mean, I had an idea. It did not turn out too well, but I learned that as well. And more recently, I'm exploring GenAI, especially Llama 3, because it's open source and it can run on your machine. So I'm exploring that how to use cases on that. So I think learning never stops. I mean, I think I paused my Llama 3 model right now, and I'm on this call right now. So like 5 minutes before, I was actually exploring how Llama 3 works, and it works really very good, even on a MacBook. So I mean, so things are really interesting. I think that has been my journey. So yeah, anything specific you want to focus on, I can dive into that.
Definitely. So that's a fair enough exposure about what all you have been into, and like there is a lot of challenge that I just heard about, right? That you have already faced, right? So you're aware about the pros and cons of every single the sector specifically,
Uh-huh.
right? So
Some
talking about the students
yeah,
specifically, that if you are answering the students specifically for this question,
yeah,
just try to give an overview about the pros and cons about every single industry that students can have in their minds while
uh-huh.
they're trying to choose the right option for them.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I mean, if I go in, so first of all, there's your personal interest. You can't beat that because if I say web development and you are actually more into data, either be it data analysis, be it data engineering or data science, so you go and pursue that route. I mean, I'm talking about a general person who has sometimes you're just confused. I mean, the thing is. There's so many options that you can go and explore. And if you're really confused about what area to tackle, then probably I'll say go and do web development or backend development or full stack. I mean, depending upon which things you prefer. But I think that would be a general route, or even app development, because that is in sync with web or mobile. That would be because the reason for that is basically most number of jobs, most number of opportunities, and you can make your own projects based on that is the maximum. Um, so that would be my thing. If you are really have no clue which thing to do, but my suggestion would be to go a little into depth of it instead of doing one copy project from on mobile and one copy project from backend, and you think that you have a working project running because the moment you actually face challenges and people who have worked on those areas can really ask questions which are really you haven't thought of because you didn't go and experience that problem. For example, I remember when I was picking up React and the person asked me, okay, I filled a form, go back and prevent the user from going back. How will you approach the problem? Maybe you have done a few projects. At that time, I've done a few projects, but it was really on basic level. I was stuck on okay, how to detect navigation and how to stop the user from navigating and how to detect the form was dirty or not. So I mean these few of the things. For example, Node.js middleware authentication. What is middleware? Why do you use middleware? And what use cases you can think of about middleware? And unless you've gone and implemented those things, you're by yourself, not going through course recording. Because I think the bad thing about YouTube and courses on YouTube or any course for that matter, if you just scan through the tutorial, you will think that you know that. Believe me, you don't. Unless you have done the course without seeing the recording, or at least not taking hints. A bit of hints is fine, but that would be my suggestion. I mean, if I give myself as well.
Right. So, having like such a great exposure to the industry, like whatever experience you're carrying, right? So, on the basis of that, like what tech should these students actually focus upon? Starting as a beginner, like what should be their prime focus?
I mean, I think tech stack wise, it's fairly open because I mean, if you just talk about backend, there is Python, there is Ruby. I've not done Ruby personally, but I know Ruby is there, Node.js is there, Java is there. So I believe switching from one profile to another is very, very easy if you are thorough with the basics.
Definitely.
I mean, there will be a few pointers that change from language to language, but the overall idea remains the same. So I believe, I mean, that's one good thing that you actually learn in your 4 years is apart from all the outdated things, the fundamentals remain the same. OS, databases, networking, all these fundamentals that you actually learn, and you think that it is not useful enough. Believe me, these things will come into play when you go deeper into the field. How do, let's say, table locks work? I mean, usually we are not very focused on that. Networking, how does multi-threading impact your CPU? How cores are actually functioning? So these things are fairly simpler, but it's very fundamental. So I don't believe, because even I have switched my profile from Java, Node.js, Python. I'm looking forward to learning Rust and Golang. Not finding the time for it now, but I believe tech stack is usually not the limiting factor. I started with JSPs on the UI. I picked up Android, then I picked up iOS, then I picked up Flutter. Then I'm currently in React, so React and React Native can work in parallel. So I think you'll get a hang of it once you do your first framework, your first language. The next language will be easier. Just the syntax changes and a few things that are not allowed in one and allowed in another, or vice versa. Will you'll just have to keep a track of that. Otherwise, everything remains the same. So I won't say there's a language or a tech stack you should look forward to. Just go and pick one's the easiest. So if backend wise, I think Python is usually the most easiest to pick. So probably go and pick that if you like to. But either way, language doesn't matter actually.
Right. That's a fair enough overview about the question. Now, also, I have also seen that you pursued a master's. You did MS from University of California, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I would just like to know that what was your experience regarding the masters, and how is the education differentiated in terms of the education when we talk about the education that is being delivered in India, right? So, what are the students majorly focusing upon in the foreign?
Mhm.
How is it actually differentiated in terms of the skills that are being acquired by the students in both the different countries?
I mean, the industry is much more closely linked to the university at the moment, at least in the US. So I mean, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, almost half of my industry. For example, I learned big data from an engineer who's working at JPL, so Jet Propulsion Lab. So we very closely with NASA. My web technology course was being run by an industry expert who was an adjunct faculty. So the benefit of learning with professors who are actually in the industry, or at least almost close to the industry, so you go and learn really latest things. For example, if I remember my web tech classes, eventually I went into and became a PA also at the course. We were doing PHP, although in the starting PHP was there, but eventually we moved on to Angular at the time, iOS development, Google Cloud. So everything that was being done, you can actually copy paste to an industry.
Hmm.
And all the assignments, all the exams were focused on that level, that you actually go and implement things that are really practical. So less of theory. Obviously, theory is important, but you can actually test that on the practical aspect as well.
Right.
So things are a little different there. For example, open books are allowed. You can bring a paper. You can have all the formulas on the paper. You don't have to mug up things. So they believe the education system is in a way much more robust than ours. I think ours is also changing and evolving with time. So I've not been into the education sector for a long time. So maybe things changing, and things will change. It's a matter of time when things evolve here as well. But I think I'm not sure, but the industry links with the education system here still not there, and which actually plays a part of the syllabus being outdated. But things are changing for the better now. Hopefully, in the coming future, things do evolve.
Yeah, definitely. And there is a very definite need for that. Actually, the system
So,
needs to change according to this, because till the point students won't be getting the right exposure of the industry. So till that point, nothing is gonna change in terms of the and we need to record more and more videos for that.
No, but I would beg to differ on one aspect. You don't have to wait for the education system to change.
Definitely.
So,
Totally agree.
I would really value people going and talking to people. For example, for me, I mean, just drop a message on LinkedIn, and I'll try and answer your questions. But talk to people who are actually, that's a thing that I have actually come to learn is go and talk to people who are more experienced than you, and go and ask 10 people. I'm sure one or two will respond back, and that makes a difference in your perspective, or your looking forward to.
Right.
So that will. I think things. Okay, when I was in my education, and when I was in my bachelor's, things were very different. Now things are opened so much that
Right.
you can't rely on one thing to change for you. I think you have to take an initiative and change things for yourself. And there's tons of way you can do. Although the system changing will make it easier, but nevertheless,
But the thing is that the resources are equivalently available for everyone now.
agree.
Right.
Agree.
That's the reality. And most of the students are not even utilizing it. Right. And like that thing that I mentioned earlier, that the system needs to change. But before that you mentioned that the mindset needs to change.
Exactly.
Right. So that's a very positive message. And honestly, students who are watching this, definitely these are the serious people who are just trying to build, just bring some change in their lives, right? But I would just ask you to, like whomsoever you want to recommend to watch anything relevant, right? So just do it, right? Because it is good to share any good piece of information with the people who are actually like likely your friend, or who are just trying to change something but they're not getting the right thing.
So,
Right. Okay. So, you already have explored a lot of industries, right? And you understand that how every single domain works, right?
mhm.
So, as we all are aware that, okay, AI is something that is actually disrupting a lot of market, right? And it is
Yeah,
actually making lot many things easier as well,
yeah.
right? But it is also taking those jobs which are, regress, and it requires the same thing to be done every day at the same time, right? So, how do you think that AI will impact or is impacting your specific industries that you have been into already, right? And how will it actually impact the whole industry in upcoming 5 years?
So AI, actually Gen AI. If you're talking about Gen AI, that is
Right.
actually disrupting. So
Hmm.
it will disrupt lot of fields for sure. But it will create more opportunities than it actually creates problems.
Right.
The only thing that will actually determine whether you're losing or you're gaining is your mindset and your attitude towards things. If you start to pick up things that AI can do, and you equip yourself with relevant AI skills, I think you will be on the plus.
Huh.
But if you because the thing is, for example, I was actually listening to one podcast with Beer Biceps that actually he does about in video. I think that's the name of the tool. So the guy is making up a AI platform that can actually make videos by just uploading your 2 minute video, and he can make an entire video out of it. So content creation will be so much better. You don't need a editor to do your editing. So the thing is, it's not a point of where humans will be lost, because eventually AI maybe can do everything, but I think the industry won't allow it to
Everything
do
to happen.
beyond a certain level, because every there are checks and balances, maybe in the favor of the powerful, but nevertheless there will be some way
Yeah.
things will be taken place. But the thing is, the human mind, you can't beat the human mind. So you have to be sure that the thing you're doing is actually intellectually valid. I
Right.
mean, if you're doing things that can be replicated very easily, for example, just copy paste a thing, do refactoring of code, maybe generating let's say a Fibonacci number or something similar, you will be replaced very easily. Very menial tasks will be replaced, like it was replaced by calculators, like it was replaced by the motor engine that was developed. So bullock carts went away, computers replaced calculators,
Hmm.
then mobile phones are replacing laptops in a certain way. I think disruptions, the thing is, everything is going to be disrupted. You can't control that. The only thing is, you have to be ahead of the curve, so that when things are being disrupted, a, you know things, b, how to leverage that in your advantage. You should be knowing that. For example, when I was coming out, Gen AI was not being discussed. It was only data science.
Huh.
Now, if you don't know Gen AI, in a couple of years, you might get irrelevant. Maybe not, maybe yes, but there's a chance. So if you are behind the curve, you will learn about Gen AI 2 years later.
Right.
If you're ahead of the curve, you're already learning, and you're on the curve if you at least know and you're trying to explore that. So at least be on the curve or ahead of the curve. And the more people you talk to, the more you'll get to learn, know what things are actually coming up. And at least the idea and the exposure to it will be critical down the line.
Right.
That is how you keep yourself avoiding to be replaced eventually.
Definitely. And it is somewhat that whenever a disruptive tech emerges in the market, right? So the previous tech gets obsolete, right? And what happens is that along with the tech getting obsolete, there are n number of new opportunities coming in the market because of the disruptive tech. Because this is something that is new for everyone, right? So why not you being the first person to explore it? Or why not you being the 1,000% to do it, right? Because there are billions of people on this planet, right? So you still have a chance to actually get through it further, right?
And actually, I'll give you the other perspective as well. As more and more technology comes into play, legacy system maintenance also becomes challenging.
Right.
You won't believe even Fortran is being managed somewhere, and nobody. I think there's a very small set of people who know Fortran. I don't know if you know Fortran or not, but when I was going into industry, I knew that Fortran is a language, but it's a very, very legacy system. So imagine a server that is handling Fortran code for some reason. The knowledge of it will help you. So I mean, it's not just learning new things. Eventually, whatever legacy things are being replaced, there's a smaller and smaller subset of people who actually knew that and can actually maintain that. So I believe anything that you learn will not be immediately thrown out of the picture. There's a smaller set of people using that, so sometimes they become even more valuable for some reason. But what we actually are focusing on is actually learning new things.
Right.
Actually, the thing is, with emerging tech, you don't know which tech will actually emerge ahead. For example, blockchain is being discussed for the last 6-7 years now. There's no, there hasn't been a use case for that except gaming a bit and payments for like Ethereum or Bitcoin. So there hasn't been a widespread adoption of blockchain. It may not. When it might become ahead, you don't know. But if you already have an idea, if you played around with blockchain, with anything on blockchain, at least you know the concepts and you can adapt to it. It would, for example, if 2 years down the line, something like OpenAI happens on blockchain, and suddenly there's this big use case. Industries are adopting, governments are adopting. For example, Yatra has blockchain. So suddenly a boom happens, and you can actually jump on the wagon much faster if you already know that. So I think really keeping yourself open is very, very important. Not only for you, because eventually for me, I become really bored with the same old, let's say React and Python and Docker and AWS. Some very boring cheez ho jayega. The moment IoT comes into play, let's say Web3 comes into play, GenAI, Llama 3 comes into play, you suddenly get an excitement of what new things are coming up. If you have that attitude, at least either by naturally or at least forcefully, maybe, chalo, dekh lete hain, it will help you.
That's a fair enough overview and a very valuable answer in fact. Right. So, like any roadmap in general that you would like to talk about for the students who are just about to enter into the industry, right? And how should students who are just entering into the first year of their education, right? So, what kind of a roadmap should they follow? Because basics are similar, right? You just diversify further.
True.
Right.
So, generally, what roadmap looks like is first, I think the basics of what computer science or any engineering for that matter will be is something similar. Eventually, build upon a language. Pick any language. Don't be focused. Okay, picking A language or B language or C language. Eventually, any language works. Get into the nitty-gritties of it. Make a few projects on that, and then if you prefer to explore something other than that, let's say if you dive into Python for some reason, you want to explore React, go ahead and experiment with React. Eventually, try a couple of things. Eventually, you'll either like something or you won't like something for any reason. Maybe the industry moved ahead or you personally didn't like. For example, 3 years ago or 4 years ago, I was not too much into front end, but now I believe front end with back end is actually bringing a different skill altogether. So I've pivoted myself. Now I'm thinking of even moving further into data science. So eventually, the thing is, until unless you experience something, only then you can form an opinion. Because thing is, everybody will say, okay, for a person who is into Web3 will push Web3. A person into data science, and data science is pretty valuable, will push for that. A person into DevOps will push DevOps. Full stack is equally valuable. So I think that there are a number of opportunities in a number of areas. The thing is, pick one, and if you like happen to pick the one that you love the most, you're good. You can experiment with the others, but at least you can dive further into that. Otherwise, the best thing is to experience a couple of them and pick one that like you suit the most. Because I think there are too many opportunities in too many areas. So the first year, second year, you don't actually have to decide whether you want to go into A or B. Just go in A. If you don't like A for some reason, switch to B, because you have time to play around.
Understood. And like this is one of the common mistakes that students are doing that you already mentioned, right? So anything else that you would like to add on to the same thing, like any of the mistakes that students are doing right now in their the front end of their education, right, the first, second, third years, and that you would have identified in the experience that you have catered in so many years of your work, right? So anything that you would like to talk about?
I mean, I would say don't neglect the basics, the fundamentals of it, because you will feel, and at least I felt, is programming and actually project development is project management, or making a project or a portfolio is important. But believe me, fundamentals are equally important. You will come to know when you actually sit down for interviews, or actually have a problem at hand. And for example, I remember like 2 days before, there was a very simple SQL query where you have to divide one column with another, and the question is 1 divided by 9 is 0, and 6 divided by 9 is 1, because it is floating point, numbers are not there. Integer division, SQL will have integer division, any number system will have. So these are fundamentals. It is not about SQL में ये हो रहा है, Postgres में ये हो रहा है, नहीं है. It is binary. For example, if you divide, if you subtract 0.1 with 0.2, or let's say add 0.1 and 0.2, the answer is not 0.3. The answer is 0.300000001.
Right.
Because that is binary. So that is fundamental of CS that comes in play. It is not a trick question. It is just a think of why 0.3 with 10 zeros and 1 happens. So I mean, don't underestimate fundamentals. Although it won't be relevant to actually showcase on a portfolio, but that would be very critical. And the second thing that I have done personally is going through projects blindly. Make a project, and I think I will recommend a deeper project. For example, if you do a backend, go into the depth of it. Let's say caching or DevOps or deploying into cloud, load balancing, penetration. I mean, add a bunch of load onto the backend. Imagine you are Netflix and you're being served a million records a second, which will never happen in a project. I mean, try and implement things on a depth. Have one project, but it should be so goddamn heavy and industry focused. Imagine, because I would believe, make a project that maybe you won't get the need of it, but at least try and replicate what actually people are getting. So I mean, think on the lines of not being just a project that everybody has. For example, if 10 people have the same project, approximately the same project, think of how you would differentiate. Either you differentiate upon features, or make it production ready. Because these are two simple words, production ready, that will make a ton of difference, not only in projects but also for interviews and for your further growth. Because you come to know that just making a simple web app with a simple backend and deploying it to some cloud may be good. I'm not denying that, but there are levels further.
Totally understandable, and definitely this is something that students should actually focus upon. We currently seeing the crowd in my campus, right? So I know that students are just studying one day before they just pass the exams, right? And that's what they're losing the
Same. believe me, I'm not saying I've not done the same. I've done the same, but believe me, there are many further levels to it. Uh, Passing an exam just for the heck of it may be good if you're not focused on the particular area. But believe me, there are you should be focused on something.
Definitely,
If,
definitely.
if you really dishate networking for some reason, at least be in excellent in something else.
Right.
That's what matters.
Yeah, totally relate to it. I can. Yeah. So that's something that students should actually add on to their like their daily lives and start learning regularly, right? So that's a very positive message that you have already shared, right? So now let's have a discussion about the industry myths, right? So you have already explored a lot of different domains already, right? So there must have been some thought in your mind before entering the industries, right? But after getting into it, you must have felt like okay, yaar, ye to jhoot tha. This is fake.
Okay, let's think because that this will be so. I mean, I've been on both the sides. I've taken interviews also. I've given interviews also. But the thing is, first of all, don't try and lie on your resume or during interview calls because maybe you won't catch the person immediately. But believe me, I mean, I've done interviews of people who have even lip synced. Believe me, you come to know people, and this was for Cisco actually. And we were taking a person from India, and we had to relocate them to US, on a visa. Eventually, to know that person is thoroughly a waste of time. So we had to give them some project that we knew that won't work. After 3 months, we had to just remove them from the project. So try and not do that because the thing is reputation matters. And the fact is, if you have one project at hand, be it a small project, be a big project, or be a internship, be a first year gig, or some interaction with the industry, uh, you will come to know that you can't trick anybody. Eventually you'll fall flat. So that is something I've seen, not personally, but on the other side of the table. And thing is, have a learning mindset because eventually, what I've come to realize is you can't know everything. You will fall flat. The question is, have you guts to come up and learn the next thing because you learn a lot during any even I'm picking up, I'm learning right now as well. So there's no full stop. I think the only full stop happens when your career is over and you don't want that early. But I think I can't pick up any more myths, but I think I think let me do one more. Um, Connect with people a lot because I've come to realize is even you ping a CEO, for example, I pinged the CEO of lunch club, no, not lunch club, lunchbox, I think. I pinged him because I had saw a podcast. I pinged him 2 days before. Now he's on my network, and because of him, I got to know about a couple of VPs more. So actually, realize one thing: people want to learn because you won't believe. You come to learn from even juniors, freshers, first years, second years, because everybody is unique in a sort of certain way, and you won't realize that fact unless you talk to people that okay, I never did that, and I never tried that. I never had a question. What you were asking me, something new came up, and you gel up with the person, and you have a relationship, and those relationships may not matter at that time, but eventually they might.
Definitely.
So these are things that sometimes people at least are hesitant not to connecting or networking with people. But you can ping every goddamn person, and maybe the platform will ban you. But eventually, you'll network with so much people and get to know a lot. Because the thing is, this thing on your mind, you have a blinders on. If you know, that's good. If you don't know, you everybody has a perspective, has some blind spots that you don't realize, and that those blind spots will be removed only when you talk to people. uh,
Right.
I've met people who have done A and B and never thought that was possible, or at least that fast.
Right.
So you will only get to know when you talk to people, and believe me, everybody is approachable. Although cold calling has a 2, 3, 4% chance of working, but that 2% chance that it works will bring 100% change in you. And
Definitely.
Understood.
Like surely I can totally agree to this thing, because this is something that I have also been doing, right? Connecting people and talking to them, right? And it is difficult definitely, because everyone won't reply to you, right? But those people who reply to people like you, who actually are serious about the things that people are doing, right? Who like to explore things, right? So definitely people like you definitely reply.
Actually, that's a good side as well. If everybody replied on everybody's messages, it would be so easy to connect network. Uh,
Definitely.
I believe the thing that is hardest is the most fruitful also.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I can totally relate to it, and like it is like a very beautiful component of networking as well, right?
Yeah.
As in it teaches you certain lessons as well, along with the whole process, right? The consistency सिखा देता है. It tells you that how to be actually generous enough to answer people, how to actually how to approach people.
It'll make you humble. So
Yeah,
believe me, the more experience you have, and you get questions or you learn from people who are like 10 years younger than you, but they have done A and B
yeah,
that you could not do and you have failed.
yeah,
It'll make you humble that no matter where you are still fallible. So it'll make you so humble,
right,
and it'll teach you that you can do so much more. So it will bring you in both ways.
right. Totally understandable. Right. So, this has been a very beautiful podcast with a lot of value, a lot of takeaways that the students have been getting, right? Now, let's just move to the last component of it.
So
And it is already too long for the people to actually retain so much information, right?
I understand.
Yeah. Because, देखो, जो भी अभी इसको देख रहा है, जो भी इस वीडियो को भी देख रहा है, right? There is a lot to catch from this podcast. Honestly, I would just recommend you to watch it again if possible. अगर आपको कुछ नहीं समझ आए, just try to make notes out of it. Right. Once you are noting things down, तो हो सकता है आपको दोबारा देखने की जरूरत ना पड़े. If you want to recall what you just heard, so just go through the notes. That will help you in a better way and save your time. Right. Now, sir, anything like, at last the mic is all open. Anything that you would like to say in terms of guidance to the students, that what should they actually focus upon while they're in their college life, or anything relevant from your experience, anything will work out, right?
I think we covered a lot of tech. Let me give you something more personal on a thing. I would say the 4 years you have on college, or even like masters may, the college life so easy and chill. Relish that a lot, because believe me, the moment you step into the industry, it is cutthroat competition to the last level. So I would believe explore both sides, have a life of your own, do something personal, do something co-curricular, develop a hobby, do something non-tech related also, and live life on that aspect as well. And I know we talked about a lot of tech, but there is a life beyond that 8 hours, because I believe strongly on work-life balance, because work-life balance, if it's messed up, will kill you on a personal level. And believe me, when I say, I mean, I may be sorted up on this, but don't think that you are enslaved to a company, because eventually what I've come to realize is it takes 2 seconds for you to replace a person. This happens if you replace somebody or you are getting replaced by something. So believe me, have a good work-life balance. Sometimes stretching is definitely good, but if the stretch happens very frequently, and until unless you are in a startup with ESOPs, where you have an upside also,
Right.
until unless that is there, I think don't waste your personal life, because eventually people who are close to you, friends, family, anybody who knows you personally is much more valuable than a job per se, because the moment you are good at it, be it anything. I mean, be it designer, a fashion designer, Instagram influencer, a tech person, a non-tech person, anybody good. खाने बनाने वाले बंदे का भी नाम होता है. So the moment you're good at something, they will be a value to you. So don't rely so much on focusing on. That is something I have been also compromising myself. I work like 6 to 7 days a week, which is not good. And now I'm wanted to spend a few extra bucks to get a GPU to play, because now last 50 days I've not done anything apart from doing something on tech or something on this on site. I have been a culprit on that as well. But I would recommend you to have a life of besides tech as well, because that will help you detox and de-stress. So yeah, I think this last point I wanted to bring up as well, because everything is not tech. Believe me, you have a life beyond tech as well.
Understandable, and totally recommended to actually listen to this answer again. Yeah, because this is a very serious matter as well that everyone should actually discuss about. Companies are actually asking the employees to work from home or sometimes, and this is happening at a very frequent rate.
I think you will be the best judge of it when you are at that position, whether the thing is a frequent thing or because
Huh.
you can be taken advantage of, or there are genuine cases as well. If it is a genuine case, you will get to know. You will be the first person who will know that.
Right.
There's no right or wrong answer, but sometimes people are being tricked into working extra hours and eventually getting replaced by the end of it due to some reason. For example, अभी बाइजू का केस हुआ था. People are not getting their dues in time. So see, there are good side, there is a bad side. I am not saying don't work extra hours, because you sometimes have to work extra hours.
Right.
There's no, but come to realize there is a balance to it. अगर 2 दिन extra काम हो रहा है तो maybe we take a time off also, so that you can detox yourself. It is not only thing about taking advantage of. It is also a thing if you work for 7 days on a stretch, and that is happening for 4 weeks. Either you have a very good mindset, or you will burn yourself out, and that is not good for the company and for you. So it is not just being saying on a company side, the company might be taking advantage of you. You might be thinking yourself of. You are not evaluating yourself too good. So do take time off to relax yourself. Because believe me, बहुत आसान लगता है sitting in front of a computer and typing things, but it gets challenging on the brain. So try and take breaks. ये चीजें नहीं तो चश्मा लगेगा. Too much of screen time is not good.
Good.
So regular things that a regular doctor will, or probably a mom will tell you. Listen to your mom. इतना अच्छा नहीं होता. So have a balance. Everything in balance is perfectly good. The moment you do too much of games or too much of partying, too much of anything good or bad will kill you eventually.
Totally understand it. Yeah, and that's a very honest answer. That's a very honest overview about everything, right? And that's how we can just conclude this podcast on a very positive note, right? And I'm very thankful, sir, that you invested so much of your time on this podcast, and actually, you solved a lot of queries for the students as well. You might not realize it right now, but the people who are watching it, जिनको question होगा उनको answer मिल चुका होगा काफी सारे questions का already, if they would have listened it carefully, right? And the thing is that, and you have a very great personality overall. You have a giving nature and everything, and I really applaud you for that. Please just maintain this thing, right? Never lose it. And the thing is that I'm really thankful that you invested so much of your time, and thanking you like is still less, because you did a very great work from your side to invest so much for the students, right? And yeah,
I don't believe I've done something big, because I have also gotten via some route. So it's my responsibility to give it forward to the next.
definitely. Right, and that's what a good person says, right? That's what a great person says. I wouldn't say good, right? And yeah, thank you for watching. Thank you for being here on the podcast, sir. Thank you, everyone, and I believe you all have a good day ahead, right? Yeah, signing off.